So we'll have Shitu join us now. He is a legal practitioner, also a lecturer in law in Faculty of Law, University of Lagos. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you, Chamberlain. Thank you, Salaman.
Well, that conversation...
That will be Kimberly.
Okay.
Sorry.
That conversation always goes on, the fight against corruption, what we need to do, how we need to assess what we're doing. But let's pick up from where the acting president spoke, and he says, well, we could look at models of what has happened and how we should see how we could also bring them to bear here. And from your perspective, I mean, you've also been counsel to the commission. What do you see as the kind of things we should be doing? Because if you're speaking about models, where should we be looking?
Well, we have countries that we can look at. Singapore, for instance. Japan, countries that have, Indonesia, countries that have succeeded in reducing corruption to the barest minimum. And we will also look at international standards and best practices that are usually applied in reducing corruption to the barest minimum. One of them is preventive and proactive measures. You need to put in place measures that has the potential of preventing corruption, proactive measures. Because in looking at this, all these measures, you need to begin your analysis from what corruption is itself. Corruption is derived from the Latin verb corruptus, which means a breakdown. So when there's a breakdown in institutions, it is corruption. When there's a breakdown in systems, it is corruption. When there's a breakdown in societal traditions, it is corruption. When there's a breakdown in ethical and moral values, it is corruption. When there's a breakdown in personal behaviors, it is corruption. So measures that you want to address to solve a breakdown, a systemic breakdown, must be measures that will be targeted at preventive measures, measures that will enhance the quality of international cooperation, measures that will ensure that, if even funds are looted, you have the capacity to repatriate them from foreign countries, if you have treaty arrangements and some other things, including measures that will ensure that proceeds of crime are effectively recovered and utilized. So you need an effective asset management regime. You also need an effective forfeiture regime in addition to some other measures. But above all, there must be consequences for corrupt actions.
Okay. You spoke about
the
meaning, the etymology of the word, and then you talked about institutions, how all of those come to bear. You gave the Singapore example. And we also know how their leader at that time, which a lot of people cite in this country, transformed their country from what it used to be to what it is now. And then they made progress in the fight against corruption. But we seem to be focusing a lot on the fight against corruption. Are we taking a look at the fundamental essence? Because if you get out there on the streets and you talk to certain people, if they're hungry, are they going to listen to you talk about the fight against corruption in terms of values, ethics, and morals?
Well, you have a point, Chamberlain. But if you look at the history of our country, which has been correctly diagnosed by success, patriotic Nigerians, including this administration, what you will find is that the decay, the years of underdevelopment, of disease, of ignorance, of poverty is caused mainly by this phenomenon of corruption. And then if you want to look at in the direction of solving the problem, you have to deal with corruption. You see, it is corruption that has led to hunger that you speak about, because it's a country that is massively gifted in terms of resources, in terms of human resource capacity, natural resources and everything. It's a rich country, but unfortunately of poor people. You see, the tragedy. This is a rich country that should be swimming in wealth. But rather than swimming in wealth, what stares us in the face is hunger, is poverty, is unemployment, and then you find out what is the the reason before it. And your analysis will point in the direction of massive corruption.
Now that the acting president is asking that we try to look at models that can work for this country, I'm wondering where the search will begin and what happens to the current models that we're working with. I believe is the American-European mix of the two that Nigeria is adopting to work with now. What happens then?
Well, I think the models, there's nothing wrong with the models that we are applying now, because those models are also tailored at international standards and best practices. But we need to rejig those models. We need to make those models work effectively and efficiently. For instance, I'll give you an example. It is important for us, if we want to fight corruption, perhaps, like my professor Akinwebodo mentioned yesterday, that we tend to be focused on the symptoms and the causes. We need to deploy a lot of efforts into preventive measures. About 3 or 4 weeks ago, there was a campaign launched by the Magu-led EFCC in Lagos here, Women Against Corruption. You need to mobilize all strata of the society, the schools, the community, everybody to enlist in this fight, because corruption hurts everybody. So fighting this should be a shared responsibility. Again, you need to fund adequately. You need to invest massively in capacity building, institutional strengthening. You need to strengthen institutions to block leakages and ensure that people are given, proper training. You can see that most of the anti-graft agencies currently are grossly incapacitated in terms of funds.
So is this government doing badly?
This government inherited a lot of decay, and I think we must have a lot of sympathy for this government, given the circumstances that brought it to power. And I think we must recognize that in assessing this government. A lot of rot had taken place. A lot of decay had taken place. And this government is like coming to do a repair work. And if you are faced with that kind of situation where a lot of body has been stolen, I'm sure you should be shocked with the kind of disclosures that daily pervade the political space. In terms of source of money being stolen here and there.
But Mr. Shitu, every government that we elect on a yearly basis, every term, we always elected to come and do a clean-up job and a repair.
You see, but this in the face of
that's how we elect them. Why
in the face of, you see, you have a point. But I'm saying that in the face of massive looting of our commonwealth,
let me jump in and bring
who are supposed to, who are supposed to come and
let me bring this, Mr.
administer.
Pardon me, just a moment, because you have been, you've been counsel to the commission for a while. You've seen one come, another go. You have experience in some of these things. You've seen some of the thinking, the mindset about all of these things in terms of our fight against corruption. Do you think that we are actually addressing the fundamental basis in terms of why is it that people do what they do?